I'm born with a disability, so I'm born with a limb difference. So my left leg is 25 centimeters shorter than my right leg.
What do brands still get wrong about this kind of like representation on set, but also like representation of disabilities on like commercials and stuff like this?
Well, they don't do anything wrong because they don't do anything yet. So that's the whole thing. And of course, I'm still insecure about things. I always say that. I'm not a perfect person, of course, and that makes us human, right?
Have you fully accepted yourself already? Sophie, what do people still get totally wrong about representation?
Oh, that's a good first question, by the way. What good representation does is literally saying, okay, this group is also part of society. This is also an important group to show. There's a really famous saying, you can't be what you can't see, meaning that you can't be someone you never see, right? So it says good representation does something with your with who you are as a person, that you believe you can do your value, even though maybe you're different than the rest, because you see somebody like you represented. So it says something about your own value. It says something about I think also your state of mind, how you feel as a person. I think, and there's so much more that I can tell about that, but I think that is, the main point here is that good representation, is making people feel seen and valued.
How was this for you, like when you grew up, the representation? Like, did you feel represented in a way?
No, not at all, no. And that is also part of my story, why I hide my disability for almost 30 years. There was, of course, it was a different time, right? There was no social media. There was no, we had hives back then, but there was no Facebook, no Instagram, no TikTok. So that's also a different time. But no, I had one role model, and she was a presenter of a show on television. And she had, I think she was born with a disease on her legs. Apparently she couldn't walk really well. And for me, she was a role model, because the moment she walked from the desk in the final rounds, it was a game show. You could literally see her disability. And then I always thought, whoa, oh my God, she's on television, she's successful, and she has a disability. And then unfortunately, she switched jobs and she left television. And for a really long period, I didn't have any role models. And of course, the Paralympics, right? But I always say about this, that if you don't have a ambition to be in top sport, then it's really hard to see a Paralympic athlete as a role model. For a long period of time, I didn't have any role models, no.
It's actually impressive, or maybe even a little bit funny, like how little it takes to actually see yourself in someone, right? Like just maybe someone limping from one chair to another is already like, gives you like a good feeling.
Yeah, and especially now I'm talking a lot about media, but if you also don't see yourself represented in an H&M, Zara, in magazines back then, on runways, in campaigns of clothing brands, then it's nothing, right? So then this kind of difference always this little thing makes already a huge difference. And
how was that then for you, like growing up? Like if you take us back a couple of years, how did you kind of start your life? Like how did basically life start out for you?
Well, so I'm born with a disability. I'm born with a limb difference. So my left leg is 25 centimeters shorter than my right leg. This was not immediately when I was born, but it was a progressive disease. So my left leg now is 25 centimeters shorter, but when I was born, it was less of a leg difference. But from the moment I started to walk, I needed a prosthetic leg. My parents really played a really important role in this, because they encouraged me to have no fears, to have no limits, and just to try everything out, and also not to to let me feel different. Of course, I was different than the rest of the kids, but they were just like, okay, just enjoy life and let's try everything out. And if it doesn't work, we'll find a solution, right? So I didn't run fast enough for hockey or football, but I didn't mind it back then because I was more into creative hobbies, like playing in the theater and singing, dancing. And so back then it didn't play a big, huge role. Of course, I had a lot of, that was not a nice period, but I had a lot of operations on my hip because I also had something with my hip that it needs to be stabilized. And so I think in total I had 10 operations.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was not nice, but even though as a child, you are already really resilient, right? You feel like, okay, and when it's done, you can play again. And so it didn't, of course, it played a big role in my youth, but it was not a big thing back then. But that changed during my teenage years. And so then I noticed, when you are a teenager, you started noticing how your body changes. You started noticing that you are different maybe than other girls. You also want to be part of what everybody, how everybody looks. So from that moment on, it became more an insecurity. And so from that moment on, when I didn't have any role models and I didn't saw a lot of people with prosthetic legs in televisions or in commercials, I started to feel more different than the rest. And for me, it became more important how my prosthetic leg was looking. And it had to look as much as possible like a realistic leg. So like a Barbie doll leg, I always say it. And of course, if you think back of it, it feels, it's not weird that I thought about that way, because you want to be part of society, you want to be part of the rest, right?
Yeah, especially if you're like a teenager, right? You just want to fit in. You don't want to really stand out. You just want to be part of like the big mass, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. And teenagers who are different stand out, and that's something I really didn't want. And so it became much more important for me how my prosthetic leg was looking. And so this went on and on and on until my late 20s, when I had a period where I had a coming out. So, but before that, if you talk about my youth, until I was 12, 13, it was a great youth. And then I became more aware of that I was different. Yeah.
But how can someone like me imagine, for example, then your youth with like 13, 14, like how much like effort also goes into like hiding and into like, what are the things that you did to kind of like fit in? Of course the leg, but was there more that you did?
Well, I think that's a good question. Yeah. To start with, a lot of energy went into adjusting, right? And I think there are two sides of adjusting. Adjusting, in one side, it's good, right? You're adjusting to your environment or society, to be part of society. And I think that part is really well, and I still have that part. I'm really happy with that. And I need to adjust in daily life every day. That's how my life goes. But adjusting and with adjusting, how do you say this? Like adjusting far away from your personality and who you are, that's not good, because then you are not only hiding your disability, you're also hiding a part of your personality. You are covering things, right? And I think that part was harmful. And that part was harmful in a way that I was not developing myself as a person. Like, okay, I can truly be myself. I can try things, and I can have a life where I don't need to think about what other people would think of me, because that was a really big part. I was so afraid what other people would think, or how they would feel different about myself. And I had my first boyfriend was great, but it wasn't a thing. But yeah, of course, in the beginning, he had to ask me, okay, what is with your leg? It was not something that I would start on my own, at the first conversation. And of course, I was 15, 16, right? I was young. But if I look now back, if I would have a prosthetic leg like this, what I currently have, and that I would have, if I would have more role models, I would have definitely, think differently about myself and also act differently with my prosthetic leg and with my disability. Yeah.
I find it so interesting because, of course, like already in this age, like it's such a vulnerable age. I also read somewhere that in your like as a teenager, basically, your brain develops this fast, like the fastest in your life. Even as an infant, like your brain basically doesn't have so many modifications to it than in your teenage years. It's really like times.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
It's really
interesting.
So it's really extreme time in terms of like self-development and everything.
And also the hormones, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
So that's really crazy. What I find really interesting is like you're like super positive and like, you know, you're like super like a go-getter. Do you think that's more like a nature or more like nurture, like how you grew up?
Ooh, I think both. I think my mother played a really important role in this. She's also a goal-getter and really positive and really hands-on, let's go. I think that helped me a lot with not feeling sorry for myself or not feeling sad, or because, yeah, of course, I have something that has a lot of hiccups in life. And you can also sit in a corner and like cry about what things can give you in life, but that's something I never had. So I'm positive for myself, but also my mother played an important role in this. But I think also, and that's something sometimes I'm really happy that I have a disability. And it sounds weird, but it teaches me so many things in life. Like what I just said, I need to adjust 10 times more during a week, during a day than any other person, right? With an able body.
Yeah.
I have to think way much far ahead. If I go a weekend with friends or with my boyfriend to a village or to a city, I have to think, okay, what kind of shoes am I wearing? Okay, how many do we need to take a cab? Do I need to bring any other things, right? So, and that's a whole practical thing.
Yeah.
But in life, I need to adapt every day. I need to adjust every day. I have to think ahead. And I also think always that, yeah, that's something I'm really happy about. And also it gives me a lot of resilience, right? From a young age, you know, you get in touch with people who stare, who make weird comments, so you become more, I think more from a younger age, more stronger and more sometimes too young to, you have to be more grown up than the rest because, yeah, that's something that you need
have to grow up faster.
Yeah. So sometimes I'm really happy that I have this. Yeah, it sounds a bit weird, but to go back to your question, yeah, I think it has something with nature and nurture. But the positive mindset is something that I always had. Yeah.
I think that Eva Eickhout was here once in a podcast, not in my podcast, but she was here, and then she said, like, I think I wouldn't have been such a nice person if I wouldn't have the disability.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh. And I found this a really interesting sense. So she also said, I'm really happy that I have it.
And why was she more happy than... She was a more nicer person?
I don't know. I think she just said like that she's a nicer person with it than I think she would be without it. Yeah. Because she has to be way more open. She has to ask for help. She has to be, I think, a little bit more open to the world. And
interesting. Yeah. And I think that 100%. And I think that that it always it brings you something that, because you have to look different to the world, right? You have to act differently sometimes, and that's something I'm really happy about, that of course I have a disability, but I'm not in a wheelchair. I for me it's also sometimes hard to imagine how it is when you are in a wheelchair, if there's no elevator working, I can take the stairs, right? So I always have this possibility, but it helps me to look a lot more open to the world.
And I think that you said in other podcasts that you have never really been bullied in like your youth or like when you were younger. In your teenage years or in your like early adulthood, like did you experience any bullying or anything like this?
No bullying, but I think a lot of staring, a lot of comments. I never got bullied. That's because maybe I people felt also that I was strong. I always had a strong personality, even though I was insecure about things. Yeah. I always had a strong personality, and I never got bullied, luckily. But I've got a lot of weird comments on the streets, and a lot of staring, and a lot of people who feel the urge to. and that's something also maybe in the Netherlands, that people feel the urge to say everything about what they see. So when they see that you're not walking the same as any other person, they say, oh, what happened to your leg? And if I say, well, I have a prosthetic leg, they're like in shock.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'm like, you don't have to always tell what you see, right?
Yeah.
We are direct. I'm direct as well. But and that's something that I don't mind because I'm used to it now. But yeah, that's something also where you have to be, you also, sometimes you learn to have a big mouth back, even though you don't always want it, but you need to, because people are sometimes so rude. Yeah.
And then like it's so interesting that also the kind of external environment plays such an important role, right? Because I think if you would have grown up in Sweden or Norway, or where people are socially much more distant and would never say something about someone, like I mean, I think the Netherlands is really like this, that you could walk past someone on just like randomly or in a supermarket, and they would say something about your appearance or about and I think that's actually really crazy. I mean, of course, it's also nice because a lot of times it opens up conversations and interactions, and this is what you really enjoy. But if you have, of course, like some...
Yeah, but it's funny that you say, because what I also experienced is that people didn't dare to ask. And that is also has a lot of big negative effects, because I made a podcast myself with a friend of mine about, topics people don't want to talk about. Ongemak. So I'm searching for the word in English. So inconvenience. And so he experienced it himself with his dad who died. And then when you talk about grief in the Netherlands, well, that's also a topic people don't want to talk about. But also, I experienced it myself with having a disability. So I worked at a company, and then people didn't dare to came to me to ask me questions about my leg, but behind my back went to my direct colleague and asked me questions to her, like, okay, what was with her leg? And then she had to say, okay, go ask her herself, right? She's standing there. And that's something that also, that hurt me a lot, because I thought, well, even though you are a really open person, you know, I'm not shy, I'm really open. Even though if you're open, people didn't dare to came to me. And then that also hurt me a lot, because I thought, well, you can just ask me, right? Yeah, so you have the directness in one part, which is on the street sometimes a bit rude, but then I always say, if I didn't want to tell anybody, I will say, well, I don't want to tell you. And then people are like, okay, you know? And then you, at the other hand, you have people who see it, and then they don't want to talk about it. Yeah,
because I think that as a society, we really don't taught how we deal with people with disability, right? So I'm, I think, very fortunate, very lucky. I grew up in a village with, I don't know, a couple of thousand disabled people living there, which is really nice. And they built something really cool. It's like a mini city almost integrated. And from when I was 3-4 years old, I was surrounded by disabled people. They were in the village. We saw them. We have neighbors that is basically like a shared apartment that are deaf. So you always have, you learn sign language in school, like not to a crazy extent, but like to say good morning and good evening and good night and hello and all this kind of stuff. And I think this is so nice, actually, like that you only realize later in life, you know, that I have zero problems approaching people with disability. I'm very aware of, like, if I see someone with like a roller, with a wheelchair, to be like, oh, does he need help? You know, and but it's always awkward. I also think even now that I sometimes have this feeling that someone is with a wheelchair, but then you don't want to kind of just grab him and just pull him or something.
No.
To say like, hey, do you need help? Do you need support? But it's so difficult, you know. And I think what I want to aim is like, what do you think is kind of the right approach to kind of, is it like the direct approach, like to ask about it, or is it?
I always, and this is something that you're not the first one who asked me this question. And I find it also hard because it depends on your disability and also depends on the person. So I spoke to people with a disability who say, I hate it when people always try to help me. And then I'm like, yeah, I can understand that. At the other hand, sometimes, you know, people, they really want to be a nice person, right? They don't want to ignore you. So I always say, ask questions. Ask, okay. I always also, as to another person with a disability who was in a wheelchair. I said, okay, do you need help? Or do you want me to ask you questions? Yeah, I'm really happy that you even ask me. What is your preference? And then this guy said, okay, I will tell you when I need help. And then this whole day, I didn't ask him any help questions. And that's also just raising one question. Okay, do you want me to help you with anything? Okay. But 9 of the 10 times, people with a disability, they will tell when they need help, right?
Yeah. Because they've been there already 10,000 times, right? In the situations.
Yeah. So I think that's I'm always the person who say, and that's something that goes bigger than that goes on about a bigger subject than only disabilities. It's about how do we communicate with each other within society, right? We tend to avoid uncomfortable questions, uncomfortable conversations, and that's something, and that it's related to a topic about disabilities, but it's also a topic about grief, about all things in life that we feel uncomfortable with. We're also like, okay, what can I do, and how can we make it nice instead of just ask a question. And sometimes you get an uncomfortable answer. That's it.
And I think that people are really scared of, because I think people always want to kind of have a solution and solve something for someone, but sometimes it's not solvable, right? No. It's just like you have to listen and then say like, you have to accept it.
Well, that's also a thing. What I learned, also what a disability teaches me in life, is that acceptance is the only thing I can do, right? So I can accept that I have to accept that my body will never change, that my leg will never be as long as my other leg, that my scars on my hip will never raise, right? And so the only thing I can do is accept my body as it is, and that helps me a lot also with other things. Sometimes you have to accept a situation, you have to accept things in life, even though it's really hard. And we live now in a society and also on social media where also when you talk about beauty standards, then when you don't like a wrinkle, you have a Botox injection. If you think you're too thick, you have Ozempic. If you don't feel happy, you have a pill, right? For everything is a solution. And I don't say that it's not good. So if you want to do it, please do it. But it says something about, adjusting always to a sort of better solution, and not accepting sometimes as it is. And I sometimes think that accepting gives more happiness and rest than always want to change things.
Have you fully accepted yourself already?
100%. And of course, I'm still insecure about things. I always say that. I'm not a perfect person, of course. And that makes us human, right? Insecurity makes us human, makes us alive, makes us more, it gives you a sort of thing that you think, okay, sometimes I need to adjust things a bit, and it's okay. But I fully accept myself as a person, how I look from the inside and outside, and that's something that is a sort of stable basis.
That's amazing. And was it always? I mean, it was probably not always like this. You said that you had quite a hard time.
Yeah.
Was there then like a specific moment when it switched, or was it also gradually?
Yeah, so for almost 30 years, I hid my disability with that prosthetic leg that looked like a realistic leg. So it had the same sort of form and same shape of my normal leg, same leg color. It was literally when you would see myself on pictures, even though I was always hiding my leg on pictures, you could... From the far, you couldn't see it well. And of course, I was walking really bad. So you have to imagine this leg was way too heavy. I couldn't walk for more than 100 meters without pain. Even though I was 28 years old, I couldn't do any sports. But even though that, the looks for me were still more important than good and optimal walking. And so back then I was 27, 28. My relationship broke up. I was single and I was dating. And then it became a bigger problem that I noticed that I was, for a big part, I was secure about myself, about who I was, who I was as a person. But there was a vulnerable 20-30% that was about my prosthetic leg and how I was looking. And so I was hiding, when I was dating with a guy, I was hiding my disability. So I had to say, after 4 or 5 dates, when you were meeting at a bar, I had to say, well, I have to tell you something. Well, you make it really big for yourself, you make it big for the other person. And it became a whole thing, right? So I was so scared that guys would reject me on how I was looking. And so this went over and over, and then it became Corona times. Fantastic. And then dating, of course, became really weird because you couldn't meet at the bar and a restaurant, so you always had to date outside or at home, right? And then there was a guy I was dating, and well, we already were in contact, and so we met up at my place. We cooked together. We had, and that was also nice. When you were at home, you had different conversations probably than you would have at the bar, right? So we had more conversations about life, about work, and about, okay, what are your goals? What do you want to do in life? And then during that date, he asked me a really direct question. He said, Sophie, what is your biggest secret? And I was like, what do you mean? What is your biggest secret? And I said to him, I don't have any secrets. And then he said, okay, but what's wrong with your leg then? Because the whole evening I see that there's something going on. And the moment I put my hands on your leg, you put it away. And that moment literally made me stop and realize that I had a big secret, but I was not aware about that. And that was a sort of starting point. And during that same period of time, I got a new prosthetic leg maker, and he's Frank Jol. He's the prosthetic leg maker for the Dutch Paralympic team as well. So all the Blade Runners you see, he is making those prosthetic legs. And so I saw an article about him in a Dutch newspaper, and I thought, well, I might want to have a coffee with him. And the first time he saw my prosthetic leg, he was like, Sophie, we're going to be straightforward with you. I'm not going to copy that prosthetic leg. It's old. You are hiding your disability, and you can't walk without pain. And that was such a big switch in my head that I was like, I got mad at him. I was like, I don't want anything cool. I just wanted to have 2 normal legs like any other girl. And he made a test prosthetic leg for me, and he let me feel how it walked. It was way much better. And then I found a role model on Instagram because I didn't have any role models. So I looked around to see how other young people were handling this. And then I came across Paola Antonini. She's a Brazilian model, lost her leg in a car accident and was wearing glitter legs. And then I thought, well, if she can do it, I can do it as well. And that was, there was a period of time of, let's say, 1 year. And then I finally opened up, and I literally can remember it from yesterday. Like, I had this test prosthetic leg. I felt super insecure. And in the evening, it was in the middle of summer. It was 35 degrees. So I couldn't wear any long pants. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to walk a block to the supermarket with the short pants on just to see how it feels. And if I still don't like it, I can always wear long pants anyway. And I went outside, and after 10 seconds, I felt like I could pull off a heavy blanket. Like, I could finally be myself. I didn't have to hide anymore. I didn't have to think about other people's opinions, about how people would stare. And it was literally an open up, coming out. And so that's something that moment really changed a lot. And it didn't change not only from the outside, right? Also from the inside. Because if you feel more convenient with yourself, with your body, how you look, you also feel more confident with yourself from the inside, right? It goes hand in hand.
And that you then still need to kind of, because I can also imagine that like 28 years of hiding is not something that you just work out in 2 months. Like,
no,
did it still then?
It was a whole process,
yeah,
of
it was
course.
a long process. Yeah.
But a role model helped me. Seeing other people with prosthetic, like my whole Instagram feed was full of people with arms and prosthetic legs.
Yeah.
So that is a point that helped me. It helped me to. I started doing CrossFit. I started doing going to the gym, feeling more secure with my body. It was a whole process, right? So it wasn't finished within 2 months, but in the end, I think that whole process took about 2-3 years. But yeah, it changed me a lot, 100%.
What was the most unexpected learning in that time?
Yeah, it feels really simple, but that you can truly be 100% okay with how you look and how you feel. And that's something I never experienced before in my life. Like, not always have to think what other people how other people see you or how other people maybe would think. I was more focused about myself instead of other people's opinions, and I was more convenient with my body. And putting what you said in the beginning, putting a lot of energy from the young age in adapting and thinking about other people's opinions. It costs a lot of energy, and that energy finally had to go into myself, and that was the biggest learning. Yeah.
And I think it was also during this time that you then started to like also be much more vocal about it. Like you started speaking. You had an amazing TED Talk. Big recommendation, everyone to listen to that. When was for you the time that you then decided, or how did it start for you that you felt kind of ready? I mean, you said like, okay, I'm ready, but was it then another like big step for you to put yourself out there, to share more on Instagram, to start speaking on stages?
Well, it went automatically. The first moment I spoke up about it was in a Dutch magazine for girls, Linda Meijden, and I shared my story with a really nice picture with my glitter prosthetic leg, because I found it already back then really important, because if we talk about beauty standards, it's still really sort of always the same kind of people you see. And so that was my first idea. Okay, I really want to hopefully inspire others that if I can be okay with myself, then people who don't have a disability can also be hopefully okay with themselves. And so I started to share this story in the Linda Meijden, and I expected that I would have a lot of comments from people who literally could recognize themselves in my story, so people with a disability. But I got the total opposite. People from all different kind of people from society contacted me who said, well, I also had a big secret because I'm taking antidepressants medications and nobody knows it. To people who say, I feel I'm insecure about this, and you inspire me to be more open about it. And I thought, well, this is a way much bigger, not problem, but issue. If we talk about differences, visible, not visible, everybody has a difference. Even though if you don't have a prosthetic leg or don't have a disability, everybody has differences. And sometimes that you can see from the outside. And also sometimes you think you're not different, but you do feel different, right? And I thought this is a way much bigger topic. And that gave me the energy, like, okay, I really want to do more with this, because this is something that society apparently needs. And then I gave a TED Talk, and that's more about my story, but also, okay, my whole saying in that TED Talk is like, okay, we all have differences, but we have to show them more and we have to talk about it more, because then we open up about it and we make it more, we normalize it. The only thing why I'm doing what I'm doing every day is to normalize differences and to hopefully inspire people to accept themselves as they are. Yeah.
And in your content journey, like, did you already, or do you already now have the feeling that you kind of like found your format, your tone of voice, everything?
Oh, that's well, social media. I think I always have a love and hate relationship with it, but no, I now see social media as a trial and error to see, okay, what works, what doesn't work. Now I'm more in an era that I talk a lot about accepting and also about Botox and about, for example, this ideal body that we are striving for.
That no one has.
That no one has, and that there is no ideal body. And so, no, for me, social media is, sometimes I hate it because I see things from social media that I don't want to be part of. But at the other hand, I found my role model from social media. And so if I can literally, even if it's one person, with the things that I'm doing, I can inspire somebody else, then I'm already happy, right? So I get reactions for people who say, well, I'm so happy that you do this. I have a prosthetic like myself, or my daughter has a disability. We are really happy that you do this because it gives us more hope. And yeah, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And with a lot of love, of course. But and I have to say that sometimes I'm really struggling with, okay, I have to find the right way. How can I be myself and also make keep a sort of tone of voice about my mission and about where I'm standing for. It's searching, right? Yeah, you have the same, right?
Yeah,
so
of course. I think it's for everyone. It's the same, you know. In every niche, you have to try to find your like your niche, but also I think the difficulty is because you see so many things online and then you first try to like copy it.
Yeah.
And it's also about like representation and about
100%.
in a different way, of course. But like, yeah, there's also like those big creators. And then of course, in the podcast world, it's like the Diary of a CEO. And then everyone wants to like become like Stephen Bartlett. And then you realize like, is it really like what I want to be?
No,
so
exactly.
it's all this kind of stuff that you like, you try it, you go in, you go
100%.
out, and then you realize, that's not even how I would like to talk. That's also not how I want to show up online. So
no, and that's something, but also with my content, I'm always saying, okay, I really want to make my leg visible, but I don't always want to talk about my disability. I'm more than my disability,
exactly,
right? Yeah. And that's something also a sort of balance I'm still searching for, like the content when I started on TikTok, for example, I started completely talking about my disability and it went to the roof. I went viral so many times, but then at the one, I was like, I don't want to talk all day about my leg, right? And then the content I'm now making is less about my leg. I make it visible during my content, but it's not always about my prosthetic leg. And then the content goes.
Yeah.
It's so
interesting, right?
Yeah.
That is like, it's also, I think, such a difficult thing to do, right? Like, do you then go for virality and you say like, okay, I mean, it gets a lot of awareness, so that's really positive. But on the other hand, you also don't want to like use your disability for clicks, right?
No, that is still something I'm figuring out. But I think that 2 years ago I was so harsh for myself that I thought, okay, you need to do it perfectly. And now I'm like, I'm just on a trial and error, and eventually you find something, right? It takes time, and as long as you stay close to yourself, I think that's the most important thing. That you don't, what you said, right? If you're copying something from somebody else, it's not your content. So you have to figure things out that feels good.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And also, I find like really impressive story, like all the different like facets. It's so funny, like how everything lines up, because you went through your personal story, then like you kind of started to create content, being more present on stage, and now you're also a founder, which is really exciting. You founded the agency, which is called 99.
Yes.
One thing that I didn't know, and I'm gonna say it now because then you don't have to repeat yourself all the time in every interview, is that 2.5 million people in the Netherlands have a disability. Yeah,
between 2.3 and 2.5.
And only 0.6% are represented in media, which is really crazy. And that's where your agency comes in to change that. Yeah.
So 99, because 99, we are there for the 99% others.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Can you tell a little bit more about how this came to be and what's your plan? Yeah,
it's special because I'm not doing this on my own. I'm doing this with the co-founder, Friso. And so we knew each other, not directly, but we knew each other through mutual friends. And so 4 or 5 months ago, I was tagged in a LinkedIn message saying from Friso, like he already had this idea last year. He worked, he's Dutch, but he lived in Australia for a couple of years, and he worked in marketing for the disability sector. So he worked for HelloFresh, and he did a whole project around marketing HelloFresh for people with a disability. And they worked with disabled influencers. The market there is way much bigger than here. And so he came back to the Netherlands and he thought, well, I really want to do something more with this. And he like literally went into this market, saying how many people with disability do we have in the Netherlands? And he found out also these numbers that were like, it shows a huge gap. And then he found out that there was no model agency here. There was no literally an influencer agency here really focusing on this niche. And he thought, well, I really want to do something with it, but he has an able body. And he said, well, if I want to do this, I want to do it with somebody from this group, of course, right? Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. And so he posted a LinkedIn post on, 4 or 5 months ago. And then I got tagged from 5 different people, like, you have to contact Sophie, blah, blah, blah. And the funny thing was that 2 weeks before this post, I was in contact with a business coach, and he told me, okay, your mission is to have more representation and visibility for people with a disability. And that has always been my mission. I said I do it from my own brand, right? If I talk, if I present. But my whole vision is to do more for this whole group in the Netherlands. And so he said, don't you want to start an agency around this? And I was like, yeah, love it, but not on my own. I was already so busy with other things that I was like, well, maybe it comes across my path. And literally 2 weeks later, he came across my path. And so the first 2-3 months, we literally started business dating. Like, okay, do we really want to have the same aim and focus with this company? And it literally, we have a really good click. We also really are, he has a lot of experience in marketing and strategy. I have a lot of experience as, of course, a disabled person, but also about within diversity and inclusion, also within social media. And so we started, and now we have already 10 talents.
Wow, that's
tomorrow
crazy.
we are launching.
It's actually crazy because like launching with 10 talents is like, that shows like the need and also like the talents. I mean, they're already on the website. I mean, they are all creators, models, like they all have like existing following. They're all already like big on their own, but of course they have probably not so many partners that they party with.
And they didn't have any agents, so that's interesting. No, and we have nano, micro, and macro influencers. So we have big influencers, but we also have starting influencers, because the market on influencing is also that a lot of companies want to also sometimes work only with nano or micro influencers. So we have all different kind of people of talents. And there are speakers, but mostly influencers, models, but also lived experience, consultants. So we also say, okay, we really want to do the representation on the front, but also on the back, right? So if a company really wants to do a campaign around people with a disability, then 9 of the 10 times they don't have a person with a disability in their campaign team, and that's also something, right? With us, but also for us, but also with us, and that's something we can also do. So some strategic planning and some strategic advice.
That's maybe interesting to go in that a little bit. Like, what do brands still get wrong about this kind of like representation, or like on set, but also like representation of disabilities in like commercials and stuff like that?
Well, they don't do anything wrong because they don't do anything yet. So that's the whole thing. I think that's, we talked already with some companies, to see, okay, what do you think of this idea? And we get 2-3 opinions back. So one of opinions, like feedback back. They say, well, super good idea. We never thought about this. We just didn't. It was a blind spot, and we really want to work with you guys. But we didn't thought about it this before. Then we have a group that says, well, we really want to, but we are scared or afraid that we do it wrong, so we don't do it because we don't have anybody in the company who has a disability. So we are scared that we don't have a good tone of voice or anything, and we don't know people with a disability. And of course, there might be people or companies that don't want to work with us, but that's okay, right? But mostly those are the two, feedback that we get.
And both are really solvable problems, right? I mean, I think there are or were some brands in the past that tried it, but I think a lot of them also got burned, right? Because a lot of times they made like rookie mistakes that like people were not represented at all, or that people didn't really feel like a connection.
But it has to go about authentic representation. And what I mean with that is that that's something we stand for as well, is that I always give an example for Zalando, who did a really good campaign. I think it was 2 years ago, when you were like buying on their website running shoes. You had a sort of banner in front where the banner was moving with people who were like running. And then in one point you saw somebody with a blade running, and then somebody with just 2 normal legs. And that's the whole thing about, that was good representation, because it doesn't have to go always about the disability. That's something. So when they make a campaign, it always has to go about, okay, it's about your disability. No, we just want to be represented as any other person. And yes, of course, we have a disability, but that's it, right? And that's something that goes about authentic representation. The second thing is that people also misunderstood. The spending power of this group is 90 billion euros. And so if you look at it from a commercial side point of view, it's really stupid that brands and companies don't work for this group. Second of all, there's been research done a lot about what does a broader representation, a diverse representation of your society do with you as a consumer or with somebody who sees your content? And 50% more engagement. People feel more valued about themselves. So it's not only about this group, but it's also about our whole society.
Yeah.
So commercially, there's a lot of points where I don't understand why companies don't work with this group. And second of all, also it has, of course, some value for us as society. Yeah.
That's true. I remember that I think 2 years ago, I think that Nike had like a commercial with someone with a prosthetic leg, but they got like huge backlash because they did like a special line, I think, a special shoe, but then they sold 2 shoes.
Yeah.
And then someone with a prosthetic leg says like, well, that's really cool. Like, first of all, kudos that you've done that. Like, I'm really nice. Like, for the first time, I see someone that is like me. But then I go on the website and then I have to buy 2 shoes. Like, what should I do with the other one? You know? And then they said like, well, there are probably people that have left or right. So why don't we like team up? So someone is getting, for example, like to left or to right. And then like this kind of stuff where it's just like, you know, like why did no one think about this? But this happens if you don't have anyone like
a lived experience person. Yeah. So that's the thing. You have somebody on the front, which is good, but you have to have somebody with this kind of campaigns, especially you have to have somebody of that group on your campaign team as well.
And I think that also is with any group, right? So it's like with sexual orientation, with race, with everything. Like normally when there's backlash and they go viral for the wrong reasons, it's because there's no one in the team who thinks like, wait, is this how we should represent this minority or this? So that's always the problem. And it's not that hard.
And the funny thing is that I think that it is, you know, of course, brands can make mistakes and everything, but now it's currently nobody is doing it, right? So I prefer that people will make mistakes because then at least there's something happening. And that's something that's, still in the Netherlands is, we are way much far behind.
When 99 succeeds, not if, when, what changes? Like, how would the Dutch media landscape look in 1 or 2 years' time?
Well, I hope our goal is now the representation is 0.6%. My goal or our goal is to have it at least to 1.5%. That would be fantastic. I would already be happy that media makers, so on television, but also brands, are thinking about this group in their heads and minds for auditions. That, of course, and that's also the funny thing that people say, so you want to have campaigns only with people with disabilities. I said, no, I want to have us as a group also represented. So when you think about a campaign, like a normal campaign, it doesn't have to go about the disability, that we're thinking, okay, we have to step into 99 as well, that we can have also talent with a disability in the audition. And I think I'm really happy when that kind of process will start. And it's a long shot. Yeah. We're talking about that. We're the only one now, right? So there are a lot of model agencies, for example, in the Netherlands. They have diverse models, but that's mostly about people with different genders, people with different cultural backgrounds, with different body sizes, which is fantastic, by the way, I have to tell. But then they don't represent people with disabilities. So that's why because that's the thing, we get also questions about why do you really want to focus only on this niche? Because I said, well, we're not represented at all.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah. It's really insane. Like when you told me this, then I was like, it was like, like mind blown. Like, of course this will work, you know. So that's really, really amazing. Amazing. Like super nice conversation. I have always 3 final questions. That I ask to every guest. The first question is like, what is something that you're learning right now that you're not good at?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think what I'm learning currently and what I'm not good at is having 1 or 2 focus points, because I like to do a lot of things. I setting up 99, working on my own brand, also giving a D&I advice, setting up a new training, and you can't have it all at the same time. And so that is my learning from last year and this year, especially when you are an entrepreneur. You have the freedom to do a lot, right? But sometimes, not sometimes, always focus is sometimes so important, especially when you're setting up a new company. And so that's something I'm learning now. That's okay. I focus now on 99 and my own brand, and that's it for now, right? I can't do the other 5 things. I wanna develop a new talk. I wanna maybe write a no book. I wanna, there's so much more I wanna do.
Yeah.
But you can't do it all at the same time. So
And then casually also going to snowboarding. So
exactly, I'm learning snowboarding. Yeah, but that's something like a hobby. But yeah.
But still amazing.
Yeah.
What name would you give this chapter of your life?
Oh God. Exploring.
Exploring.
Because I'm exploring new things, exploring my new company, exploring my personal brands, and don't have the obligation of a 9-to-5 job besides that, because that's something I did for the last years, and I can tell you that was not working. So I'm exploring what is working best for me, and I think that's the best explanation. Yeah.
Nice. And if you could send a SMS to all mobile phones in the world, what would you say?
Go to the website of 99. Let's collaborate.
Let's collaborate.
Yeah, I would say that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I normally don't allow commercial messages, but in this case,
okay.
But in this case,
no.
But in this case, I think it's a very good cause. So
it doesn't feel commercial. That's good.
Exactly. It's not commercial. It's a good cause.
Great.
Perfect.
Right.
Sophie, thanks so much for coming on.
It was a pleasure.
Very, very inspired before already, but now even more. All the best for 99. I
Thank
think
you.
Everyone who is listening right now, like, subscribe, follow the agency, follow Sophie, of course. Everything is in the show notes. And we are back with a new episode in due time.